Hello everybody, Hassan here, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I want to talk about why everyone is so early with Bitcoin. Before we do that, guys, before we talk about this video, do like this video, smash the like button. You guys know how the YouTube algorithms work. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. The community is growing, so thank you so much for support. So I wanted to make this video after reading this article here on Bitcoin Magazine, which I've covered in the past. Everyone is so early to Bitcoin, right? So scaling solution promised to bring exponential growth to Bitcoin, ensuring the current volatility is a mere bleep in the future. So everybody in the space is in this space because there is some sort of potential in the future, right? I think between you and me and most viewers in this channel, we all believe that Bitcoin has a future in our communities, in our societies, and in our nations. But the thing that most people are doing wrong, I think, in my opinion, is that a lot of people are looking at Bitcoin, what it has done in the recent years, specifically in the last 12 years, basically since its birth in 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto. And a lot of people are sort of saying that, well, this is what it's done, so this is what it's going to do in the next 5-10 years. But this is, in my opinion, the wrong way of thinking at it, right? This is why exponential growth will happen with Bitcoin, right? And the reason why I'm mentioning this is, for example, if you take a look at this nice chart here, this nice graph, the internet, if you had looked the internet in the 90s, right? Let's say in the mid 90s, late 90s, and you sort of said, okay, this is what the internet has done in the last 5 to 8 years. This is what it's going to be in the next 5 to 8 years. You'd be completely wrong, because the internet at that time was serving a specific segment of people and doing a specific set of executions because of the limited knowledge and the adoption rate that was going at the time, right? You saw those companies at the time. Everybody knows about the dot-com burst. So my point here is that after what the internet was able to accomplish in the 90s, it entered in the 2000s. And even it took until the late 2000s and early 2010 to really develop the internet the way it is today, right? Social media platforms, you see fintech, Twitter on fintech, or Reddit, people are learning like no other time in history of human history, really, not just about financial, right? About history, about, knowledge, about any sorts of knowledge, right? It doesn't have to be about fintech, could be about fintech, could be about technologies, could be about all sorts of topics, right? And this is what the internet was able to do. And that's because you had innovation over innovation, and you had adoption rates going up, you had the cost decreasing, and then ultimately you had more people involved in this. And then if you had told people in the 90s that most white collar jobs would be operating behind a computer on the internet, most of us at that time would tell you you're crazy. But that's exactly what's going on. The pandemic shifted people working from home. Everybody has an internet connection at this point. It just drew that type of innovation that the internet sort of was able to accomplish in the last 20, 25 years. Now, extrapolate that and contrast that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin came about in 2009, and it has achieved what it has achieved today. It's no joke. It's no single feat. It's a huge accomplishment, right? El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as a Bitcoin legal tender is amazing, but we are so early with Bitcoin still. There are still many nations that have not adopted Bitcoin as Bitcoin legal tender that should be adopting it, as we mentioned in this channel. There are many, many communities that are still frowning upon Bitcoin. My anecdotal experience is when I brought up Bitcoin in 2017, a lot of people sort of laughed at it, sort of said it's a scam, it's something it's just ridiculous, you shouldn't consider it, it's just people trying to make a quick buck on it. And fast forward that in 2021, what we saw the pandemic do with some nations, specifically with developed nations such as Canada, right? The fiat printing, everything we saw, Bitcoin now becomes actually something sound. It becomes sound money for many people, right? A lot of people got in this space the last year, right? Make no mistake, guys. It's not just people that entered in this space early days in 2017 when we had the ICO boom. A lot of people specifically entered into space the last year because of what happened with the pandemic. They saw their governments, regulating the way they had to do it. Again, we in this channel, we try to not go too political. We try to just cover the technologies, but we just can't help ourselves to comment on the fact that fiat printing will directly increase the adoption of Bitcoin. It's inevitable, right? When you think about it, what Bitcoin stands for, what the supply chain is limited to 21 million coin, and now why it is a non-state monetary system, to me, it is inevitable, right? It has to happen. And there's a fellow Canadian here, Greg Foss here, fellow Canadian, he wrote this paper, quite a lengthy paper there, why every fixed income investor needs to consider Bitcoin as portfolio insurance. And he talks about the credit markets. He talks about why Bitcoin is actually something that people need to consider as soon as possible, right? And I love this quote here. Bitcoin equals to math plus code equals to truth. Never bet against open platforms, right? Never bet against open platform. Think about it, guys. If you had the iPhone when it was released in 2007 and you saw the iPhone, you're like, okay, well, in 2021, it's going to be doing that, right? You would never be able to tell that because the App Store wasn't even available initially. Apple services weren't available. Security wasn't even a topic at the time. If you guys remember, cybersecurity and so on was a very minor issue for most companies at the time. And you just wouldn't know the adoption that most people, professors, students, average citizens, seniors would have iPhones in their pocket and be able to communicate with each other on a digital realm, right? And then use Tesla as an example. If you saw the Roadster in the late 2000s and you thought that Tesla would only be able to deliver high premium electrical vehicles, then you'd be completely wrong, right? And fast forward today, they're breaking records. They have their power as a service model with superchargers. They have the Tesla insurance underway, and they've literally adopted Bitcoin in their balance sheet. There's so much. We are so early with Bitcoin. That's my whole point here. The Lightning Network, a second layer system, right? The second layer system that will enable social media platforms like Twitter and like Facebook, like YouTube, to adopt Bitcoin as transactions to send and receive Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, right? Twitter has done it. Again, game theory into play. We are so early still because there's so many other platforms that are yet to adopt Bitcoin. Don't be surprised if YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, all those platforms adopt Bitcoin in some sense to allow to send and receive Bitcoin, right? And there was one thing about I do want to say before I leave this video off. And yes, there is the layer 3, the decentralized apps on top of the Lightning Network. I won't go into this, but that's why this article is important for you to read to understand why we're so early. It doesn't just stop at the Lightning Network. There's even a layer 3 into play here. But the last thing I want to say is people often say, well, why didn't they do send and receive money through the fiat system on Twitter, on Facebook? Actually, it's not because they didn't want to do it. It's actually because they couldn't do it because the fees wouldn't make sense for these platforms. The fees to transact in fiat, which basically your USD or your Canadian dollar, your Australian dollar, euros, and so on, just wouldn't be able to allow you to do that, right? Because of the fees, right? Take a look into it. Just Google it, right? Why can't Twitter accept, fiat as send and receive dollars, right? Just Google it. You'll figure it out on your own. The fiat system just doesn't allow you to do that. So we'll end this video like this. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Like this video if you found value from it. Subscribe if you haven't, and we will see each other in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Thank you.